Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sport Limerick Soccer Podcast with Jason and Noel O'Connor as our usual guests. We can't even call them guests; they've been here so long anymore. We'll start off with yourself first, Jason. Shelbourne draw last week for Treaty United, 1-1 draw. Huge spirit shown because Shelbourne really don't get points taken off them in this division at all, really. And obviously a brilliant goal from Willie Armshaw to send everyone home happy on Friday night.
Yeah, I thought it was a great performance, Adrian. I felt Treaty certainly didn't steal it. I know it was a last-minute equaliser, but on the balance of play, a couple of chances for Shelbourne, and they were kind of off Treaty mistakes, really, to be fair. I thought it was good value for the point and a fantastic goal by Willie. Just shows really what the team is about. They never give up. They keep going to the end. But, I think there's a bit more to them now, and that's starting to show. Some very, very good performances. I thought Cali Mcnamara was superb again in the middle, especially when you consider he was on his feet for 6 hours that day, working summer camps, so people have to realise that as well. I thought Joe Collins was very, very good, and something Joe did well, I thought, was played forward a lot, got hold of the ball and looked to play forward. I know Kieran Hanlon was isolated, but anytime he got it, he wasn't going sideways and backwards just for the sake of it. I was very impressed with him. I really was. And obviously, Willie Armshaw is doing what he's doing. You look at his stats, Adrian, he's yet to start the game. He scored 2 goals and that assist, I suppose, for Matt McKevitt in Cove as well, if to factor that in. So he's really affecting the game. But I was really pleased for Tommy. Shelbourne, as we know, are runaway leaders. No one's really taking points off them, and Treaty, as I said, very, very good value for the draw.
Yeah, definitely. And in fairness, both of you flagged it as a possibility that Treaty would pick up a result from this game, and it was by no means a dead rubber, even though a lot of other people had written off Treaty United because of the form of Shelbourne as much as anything. So in fairness, Noel, it really was a superb result for Tommy Barrett and the whole playing staff and management.
Yeah, really great. I have to say, I thought, looking back now, there was a touch of England about Shelbourne, I thought, because they totally dominated the first half. I couldn't see Treaty get out. Treaty didn't get out many times. Overall, I was disappointed with Shelbourne. I think, obviously, they are going to win the league, but if they play like that or they get that kind of a mindset, they're certainly not going to be in the Premier Division for too long. I heard Tommy saying that, they have a lot of Premier players. I think that remains to be seen. And when they do go up with performance like that, they won't last too long in it. They must be disappointed as well. Obviously, a brilliant goal by Willie Armshaw, but they've conceded a last-minute goal again to Treaty from a corner. And while it was a brilliant strike, he should have obviously been picked up. And they've actually made the same mistake again, and it happened during the game as well when Anto O'Donnell made a brilliant run to the back post, similar to what Clyde O'Connell did in Talca Park, and he should have scored again. And you're saying, if these guys want to be, getting to the Premier League, which it looks like they are going to be, but certainly surviving and prospering in it, they need to certainly iron out these mistakes, and not kind of play to the opposition and hope to get a scrappy win. And if you look they've beaten Wexford only by a goal and Cabintini by a goal, it looks like they're kind of coasting a little bit. And, while in the short term it'll probably be okay, in the long term it certainly won't. But listen, a great point for Treaty and fully deserved. I thought when Sean Mcsweeney came on and Matt McKevitt came on, they certainly looked a real threat. And when you're only a goal behind, and certainly in this league, you always have a chance of getting an equaliser, and they stuck to it right to the very end, and they were certainly fully deserved of the point on Friday night.
Yeah, definitely sticking to the very end was true of the character of the side throughout the season. Jason, you mentioned it there, Joe Collins' performance. Tommy was quick to point out when I was naming out every other midfielder in the post-match interview that I failed to name Joe Collins as one of the players that would be fighting for a place. But you also mentioned Willie Armshaw there, obviously has made massive impacts against Cove, Bray as well, and obviously now Shelbourne too, coming off the bench. Also against Wexford, in fairness, went on a really mazy solo run. Tommy has mentioned on a couple of occasions that he likes when the game breaks up, bringing on Willie Armshaw off the bench. But surely now he'll probably be knocking down the manager's door because of how many big moments he's been involved in the team when he has come off the bench.
I'm sure he will, Adrian, and Tommy will relish the fact that if he is, because as a manager, you always want players coming to you and telling you that they want to play and they want to start and they want to be in the first 11. But Tommy's managed him very well, I think. You know, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about young players and smaller players, I suppose, in this league. And Willie's at his best when the game, kind of the tempo of the game goes down and it gets stretched a little bit. And that's where the impact is happening. You know, is he ready to start the game? You have to consider, you know, that Treaty don't dominate possession, you know, in a lot of the games. And it's only later on in the games that they kind of push forward. And that's where he has his impact. So I'm not so sure that he'd be ready to start him just yet. Tommy did say something else in the post-match interview, which I found interesting. He was saying that he'd expect to have a different team or a different maybe formation next week for UCD. And there's a comment he made that you can't afford to give UCD back the ball the way we did kind of against Shelbourne. Now, we know UCD are very good football inside, but they're not of I suppose, the stature of the players aren't what Shelbourne have. You know, and look, they've kind of stumbled to a few results themselves lately, UCD. Last minute winner again last week for them, you know, so they haven't been in great form. But I would agree with him about the change of shape. I know he goes on about 4-1, but that was very much a 4-5-1 last week. Kieran Hanlon was isolated for a lot of the game, and it was only, look, he went 3 at the back towards the end and pushed bodies forward in the hope of getting something, and because it was a free shot, he was able to do that. I have kind of said over a number of the podcasts that when the opposition play 2 up front against Treaty, then Treaty find it difficult, you know, and we saw in the Belfield Bowl the problems that Colin Whelan and Liam Kerrigan and these people can cause, you know, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does. It was interesting that Mark Walsh went in as a centre-back, and Tommy said that he's played there before for Nina, so that might be something he might explore. But look, I agree with him. You can't afford to be giving the ball up cheap all the time. You will get punished. And okay, he has his first choice back 4 and defenders now back. Noel mentioned Sean Mcsweeney. I'd say he'll definitely start, and I'd wonder would he go with Joel Custrain if he's fit? And we saw him doing a fitness test before the Shells game. And the 2 lads in the wide areas, well, they're very workmanlike, as we know. They don't offer a whole pile going forward, Adrian. We can see that. So maybe it's in them areas that Tommy is talking about.
Yeah, Jason mentioned it there, Noel. Obviously, the upcoming game with UCD. We know in the fixture in the Belfield Bowl, Treaty actually raced into a 2-0 lead, lost the game 3-2. It was like almost fitness had told as well in that game. And in fairness, a 15-minute period of madness where UCD blitzed Treaty United. It's a game though where UCD are coming into it. They have been Wexford recently, but they're coming into it in poor enough form, and it does offer a great opportunity for Treaty at the Markets Field to get 3 points and at least 1 point anyway.
I think so, yeah. And UCD they seem to be a completely different animal to the one before the break. As you say, they won last week, and that certainly give them a boost. I think they'll fancy the Markets Field as well. And I think they'll play with a bit more purpose than Shelbourne did on Friday night. They're not a team to, you know, if they do go a goal ahead, or if they score a goal, they certainly won't be sitting back in it and hoping that they'll see the match out with the 1-0. That's not just in their DNA. So it's a very good game. I think Treaty obviously are going to be in right form for it. I think it's a very winnable game for them as well. And, you know, as Jason mentioned there, a few lads coming back fit. I think he's right. I think Sean Mcsweeney will definitely start. They've options off the bench. If you know, they'll probably start Red again up front, but you have McKevitt and you have Willie Armshot to come on. So Joel is close enough as well. So they certainly have the footballers now and a bit of talent going forward. Be nice to see them, you know, maybe start with the attack in mind and actually take the game to UCD, because while UCD won last week, you think that their confidence wouldn't be great, and you'd always say that about a team that's going through a poor run. Don't give them hope, like don't give them a foothold. You know, don't be giving them a goal start, if you like, and then trying to claw back a draw late on. It would be nice to see them actually take the game to UCD. You know, just be a little bit bolder now. I think they can be. it's obviously third against fourth as well. So as long as they don't lose, they're going to stay in that third place. So, I mean, if they go out, with a really positive frame of mind, I think that they could win the game.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, what we spoke about last week about Shelbourne being a free shot for Treaty, but by getting that point against Shelbourne now, this really means that UCD is a massive chance for them, Jason. From the first game viewing, Jason, from your own experience, I suppose, watching UCD, what would you say would be the biggest threats that UCD possess, and what Treaty will have to stop if they're going to get the 3 points on Friday night?
Well, I suppose the obvious one is Coughlin. We know that, Adrian. It's the three midfield players for me. The side has been unchanged. UCD haven't changed the starting 11 in the last couple of games. So you'd probably expect that to be the same again with Derek Keane, Paul Doyle and Sean Brennan in the middle, who really, really impressed me anytime I see him. He's a real footballer. He gets on the ball. He doesn't give it away. And I'm not so sure, though, about going attacking UCD, because we saw on Friday against Shells, it was when Treaty actually came out. It was from a corner in the first half, around 30-odd minutes that Shelbourne broke on Treaty and ended up with a 2v1 with Michael O'Connor and JJ Lunny, and they were lucky to escape that one. There was a couple of other instances where Treaty tried to come out and play a little bit start to the second half as well, and they kind of exposed them. So I think that's where they need to be careful, Adrian. I'd like to see the three at the back, that, and I think this could be the game for it, because there's a lot of very, very good movement from UCD in the final third. We mentioned Whelan, we mentioned Kerrigan, and they're very dangerous players, and Noel is right, the pitch will suit them. It'll be total football from them, but with a purpose. So I agree with Noel there. So I think Treaty need to be very, very mindful of that. And again, I'll say it, the three at the back, match up in the middle, man for man on those three that I mentioned in the middle of the field, and get two up front that maybe can cause Sam Todd and Weir, and it's Jack Heaney have been the three centre-backs for UCD. So maybe cause them a few problems going forward, but at the right times, Adrian, I don't think Treaty have been very free-flowing and very open at all this season, and that's what stood them in good stead. So I wouldn't be changing that too much as regards the approach, but maybe that you could have a change in formation.
Yeah, Noel, it's fair to say from your previous comments about Sean Mcsweeney that you probably expect the midfield three area to be Jack Lynch, Cali Mcnamara, with Sean Mcsweeney further on, also dropping back in. Joel Coustrain went through, I wouldn't say it's a fitness test, but he warmed up before the team warmed up and did a few sprints on the pitch last week, which would suggest that a week later again and a week's more training that he could be involved. That's the big point, I suppose, at the moment, is what Jason said about Ed McCarthy and Matt Keane. They have been great servants, and obviously Tommy has been very loyal to them because they have given a lot defensively to the team as well. Do you expect to see a change in that because of the fact, as Jason said, that maybe those two players don't offer you as much going forward?
I'm not so sure, and he's right about it. I think maybe one. I think if Joel Coustrain is fit, I'd expect him to start on the left. I doubt they'll make two changes either side, and I'd be mindful of the fact as well that most of the trouble that Treaty got in the Belfield Bowl was down in the wide areas. It was a torrid night for particularly Charlie Fleming, but to a lesser extent Mark Ludden as well. And if he's thinking back about that, well, then he'll obviously want that bit of protection, a bit more protection. And in fairness, both of them have worked really hard in the defensive side of the game. But I just felt that they missed a little bit of a trick last week. I just felt that they kind of gave Shelbourne way too much respect, and we spoke about it being a free shot, and it just showed how vulnerable they were, because in the last 20 minutes when Shelbourne, if you like, should have been run away with the game, it was Treaty that were on top. And they say that at times the best form of defense is attack, and it may be just nice to see maybe just one night where they'd actually take the game to the opposition. And again, I'm saying that they're going to be a bit brittle. I think UCD, they won't be looking forward to it really. Obviously, they're looking forward to playing the pitch, but if you were to go goal up against them with the kind of results that they've had in the last, 4 or 5 weeks, well, you could really put them back and really knock the stuffing out of them for the next few weeks.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how that pans out. Jason, just to go on to news on the transfer front, we had spoken, Tommy mentioned it to me in the interview after the game, that both Shane Cusack and Ed O'Dwyer have now departed the club. The club announced that yesterday officially on their social media pages. I have to say I wasn't too surprised by Ed O'Dwyer. He got injured at a very bad time in terms of, Mark Walsh and Cali Mcnamara then excelled in midfield. You also have Sean Mcsweeney. He had so much competition there and just didn't get a crack at the whip, even though it seemed like he might, considering he was one of the first subs against Bray on the opening day, but suffered an injury, went back to St. Michael's. Maybe one of the more surprising ones would be Shane Cusack, but I suppose it is understandable because Shane Cusack was a number 2 to Barry Ryan for so many years with Limerick FC in his younger years, that when you get to 29 and he's only made a couple of appearances and Ty Ryan has played really well, I suppose it's understandable to see, and now he's gone back to the market as well.
Yeah, Ed O'Dwyer is probably a different one. He's young and he has a lot to learn, I suppose, at this level. And is he going to get into that midfield area when everyone is fit? I don't think so. Will he get in at the back? Probably not as well. So he could see that it was only a bit part for him. Very hard to blame Shane Cusack, in my opinion. He got into the team a couple of occasions, Adrian, and did nothing wrong, in my opinion. And there's very little between him and Ty Ryan. Again, that's just my own opinion. I think there's very, very little between them. They both have their faults. They both have their positives, and they're around the same for me. And look, give respect to Barry Ryan. It's okay to be number 2 at Barry Ryan at that stage in your career if you're Shane Cusack. But I suppose, look, whether he'll admit it or Tommy will admit it is debatable, but he could have felt a little bit hard done by. And if I was him, I would have felt a little bit hard done by because, as I said, he got into the team, did well, and then it just seems anytime Ty gets fit, he's going to be back in. And that gives Tommy a problem now, Adrian, because you can't be putting an under-19s keeper into goals in this division in the position Treaty are in and the way they play. So he's going to have to source a keeper who's probably going to be willing to sit on the bench now for the rest of the season and who's also capable. And that's not easy to find, especially when you don't have a budget, So that's interesting. We mentioned Sean Mcsweeney there, and I know you said he can play, obviously, that third man in the middle. We might see him on the wing. He came on the wing against Shelbourne. He didn't play as a winger. He drifted in and out, and he was very hard to pick up for Shells. So that's an interesting one as well, just going back to the formation. Brian Murphy, we believe, is with Treaty and is close to fitness as well. Ex-Fairview Rangers. He's an attacking option when he is fit, most definitely. So, yeah, Shane Cusack is the big one for me, and it's going to be tough for Tommy.
Yeah, definitely. And Noel, this is, as Jason mentioned already, it was something I picked up on straight away. I suppose Cusack is a massive loss because there was part of everyone that thought maybe Shane Cusack was happy to play that role, as a second string. Clearly that wasn't the case on this occasion. But it is going to be very hard for Tommy now because I don't know whether he will go with a 19s goalkeeper if that is the plan, but to try and find a goalkeeper, as Jason said, who's willing to probably sit on the bench as he will feel to Ty Ryan. And also you also need a goalkeeper then as well if you're going to sign him that is good enough to come on, because Ty Ryan has been prone to a couple of injuries already this season, so they will need to be ready. Yeah,
it's the most difficult position to fill in the squad in my book every year, the reserve keeper. You generally do have a number 1. The guy who's signing, he has to be happy with being on the bench and happy with not playing too many games. I think Jason's right about Shane Cusack, and you think about it, they win away from home, a kind of a famous win below Turner's Cross, and the following week he's not in. So he wants to play every week, and I'm sure there was a bit of pressure on him. Newmarket are a decent side as well, a decent club, and he probably just wants to play every week. But no, it certainly won't be easy to fix, and it is important. It doesn't really matter ever until your goalkeeper does get injured or your goalkeeper gets sent off, and then it can be a real issue for you. Yeah, Brian Murphy, you mentioned there, Jason. Obviously, we know him. He played with Cove Ramblers most recently, but we know him. Obviously, he spent a bit of time with Fairview, as you said as well. He's an attacking option. We also believe that
if rumours are to be believed, this isn't substantiated too much, but that Stephen Christopher, who did leave Galway officially last week and announced that on Twitter, is close to signing for the club as well. And I believe he was at the game last Friday. That would probably, considering his form with Cove before he went to Galway, which got him to move to Galway, that would be a decent signing. That would probably throw the cat among the pigeons competition-wise as well.
Yeah, definitely. But again, he's more of an attacking midfielder, Adrian, so that's probably needed, because we see when Sean Mcsweeney is out of the team, the attacking option suffers for Treaty. So that'll be no harm either. It's certainly an area that Tommy, I suppose, is flush with players in. But players can adapt. We know obviously now Mark Walsh can play centre-back. Clyde O'Connell can play in a couple of positions as well. Jack Lynch can revert to a right back. We've seen that. So it's good that there's competition in there, and it's good that the players are versatile, Adrian. Is there a chance to get another out-and-out striker in? Again, with no budget, I suppose you're looking locally and things like that. I'd like to see another out-and-out striker come in myself. But yeah, look, it's healthy, Adrian. There's no doubt about that. And Christopher will obviously add something to the group.
Yeah, that's another point, actually, I suppose, that people have been saying, is that maybe another striker would be ideal, but another position like a goalkeeper, two specialist positions, very hard to find suitable players, as you'd know well yourself, Jason. But on the first division predictions, we'll move on obviously to those, and we'll talk about maybe Treaty and UCD in a bit. But Noel, firstly, Bray and Galway, that's a big one as well. Galway are on fire, five wins in a row. In some of those games, people said, they're not, it's typical John Coughlin team, hard to beat, don't do anything flashy, but they're getting the results. They're up to second now, when only a few weeks ago feels like we were talking about them never kicking out of first gear, should I say. Going to the Carlisle grounds, full of confidence. Do you see Bray stopping that run for Galway?
Possibly, yeah. No, Bray are a bit more inconsistent, aren't they? But I mean, they've had some great wins themselves during the year. It's an away fixture as well. There is some goals in that Bray team. I'd probably go for a draw there. I think that it's going to be a game that'll end up a draw.
Yeah, and we're Wexford and Cork, Jason, at Ferry Carrick Park. Ian Ryan will be desperate to pick up a victory, because he's had a lot of close calls now as well in his early managerial career with Wexford, but equally his opposite number will be even more desperate. So this is a huge game for both of those managers and teams.
It is, Adrian, and look, none of us predicted that Cork would be in the position they're in the table. And I suppose the personnel that they have, they should be higher up the table. It's individual errors. We saw that against Treaty, and we see it regular with Cork City. It's individual errors really that's costing them. There certainly has been an improvement in Wexford performances, and they were very close, as I said, with UCD last week. A last-minute goal from UCD is what separated the sides, So they'll make it difficult for Cork, definitely. And look, while you'd love to see Wexford get a result, I think Cork will probably have too much for them.
Yeah, and that brings us on to Athlone and Shelbourne. Athlone, I suppose, would you say, stopped the rot slightly, Noel, and that, they picked up a victory against Cavantilly last week. Now they're hosting Shelbourne, who haven't lost in so long. But, doubts, Athlone might feel that with Treaty getting a draw against them at home, that there is an opportunity here as well to pick up a victory. What way do you see it going?
Yeah, I think I would expect that Shelbourne possibly got a bit of a rollicking after the match in Limerick, and I'm sure that they'll be drumming down the standards or the lack, last week, and ensuring that there's no repeat. And even though obviously they didn't lose it, it must have felt like a defeat for Shelbourne, and I would expect them to pick up the 3 points this weekend.
And finally, before we move on to the Treaty UCD predictions, Jason, you've got Cove hosting Cavantilly. I suppose Cove will be disappointed with the way things have went in recent weeks, because it felt like they had an outside chance before they hosted Treaty. Then they lose to Treaty, lost Galway then 2-0 kind of with a whimper last week. They'll be disappointed, but Cavantilly will really want to bounce back now and stay in touch, and will need that victory, you'd imagine, to keep confidence going in the camp a bit.
Yeah, it's a big game for Cavantilly, Adrian, definitely. As you rightly said, Cove on the back of 2 defeats. I listened to Pat Devlin after last week's game, and he was bitterly disappointed. You could see that he needed something out of the game, and he mentioned this fixture, you know, and he was saying they'll be back on the training ground and they'll be ready for Cove. So I would expect Cabinteely to get the result there that they need to keep them in touch for them playoff spots, but it won't be easy. Cove, as we know, play a nice brand of football without getting too many surprise results, I suppose, but it's a very unpredictable division, as we know, but Cabinteely, I'd expect them to win.
Yeah, and briefly stay with yourself, Jason. Briefly, what way do you see the game going at the Markets Field on Friday night?
Well, you'd be a foolish man to bet against Treaty, I think, Adrian, really, at this stage, you know, and especially with Mark Walsh coming back and Sean Mcsweeney coming back into the side, and as mentioned, Joe Collins and Cali Mcnamara doing exceptionally well in the middle. I think Jack Lynch has suffered a little bit of a dip in form lately, you know, but you know what you're going to get from him, a solid professional performance every week. And as we keep saying, and I keep mentioning it every week, the back four, you know, pick themselves, and rightly so, on their performances, you know. So I think there'd be good value for a draw, Adrian. I don't think they'll have enough going forward to beat UCD, but I don't see them getting beaten. I think it'll be a draw.
Yeah, and the same question to yourself, Noel, the outcome of Treaty and UCD.
Yeah, I'd be a bit more bullish than Jason about him. I think with the lads coming back, with Mcsweeney back, you know, with the likes of McKevin and Armshaw, even if they do come off the bench, they get 15 or 20 minutes. They seem to always create chances. And I'd go for a 2-1 victory for Treaty.
We certainly hope that we get at least a point anyway from the Markets Field on Friday night. Jason, there was another good news Limerick story for a junior club Saturday evening. Fairview Rangers beat Athenry again on penalties like they did in the Junior Cup. It was obviously means now they're into the draw for the first round proper of the FAI Senior Cup. Brilliant for the club. And also, you know, keeps alive the possibility of a Treaty United versus Fairview Derby when the draw comes on tomorrow night.
It does, and I suppose, look, Fairview are at a disadvantage now if they draw a League of Ireland team, Adrian, you know, because they're still in the middle of their pre-season, and it's difficult for them to get competitive games to be ready. And I suppose that showed a little bit in the performance against Athenry. We're all delighted, obviously, that they got over it on penalties. Good to see Conor Coughlin. We mentioned him last week, a recent signing from Ashganacotty, getting on the score sheet. And also Owen Duff, who's just come out of youth football. He's a Clare native, someone I'm very familiar with, really, really quick, and has stuck at it, Adrian, stuck at his game and is improving all the time. So I was delighted for him to get on the score sheet. And look, when you have someone like Aaron Savage in goals, you're always going to have an advantage when it comes to penalties. He's always good for a couple. And I'm delighted for Derek White and Jason Purcell in particular. And I hope that the draw is favourable to them. I wouldn't like to see them get Shamrock Rovers or Derry or some of the top teams, Adrian, you know, because that could be a bridge too far for them. But someone like Athlone, Cove, Cabinteely, Wexford, and even Treaty for the locals for the game itself, you know, would be ideal. But look, it's a testament to the work that's been done in the Fair Green. And as I said, we're absolutely delighted for them.
Yes, we certainly are. We'd like to extend our congratulations to Fairview, who will be in the draw, which is on 2FM tomorrow evening, Noel. I suppose this is a difficult one because normally when a draw is on and you're Treaty United and you're in the second tier, you'd probably be hoping for maybe a glamour tie like a Shamrock Rovers away, where you know that they might get 2,000 at the game and you know it's financially viable because you split the gate. Unfortunately, in COVID times, you know, it's a bit different because, you know, you're limited to the amount of people you're going to have in the ground. So I suppose, would you prefer maybe to get a team that you can, you know, have a chance of beating as such and progress a bit further, but before you get a chance at a big side?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think what you want is a winnable tie. Obviously, a home tie is always great in the cup. But, you know, a team like nearly anyone in the first division, in fairness to Treaty, because they've been a match for everybody in the division. But even thinking about the teams that are ahead of them, maybe Galway, you'd wonder, you know, is their focus on the FAI Cup at all? because I know John Coughlin will be very single-minded, and he'll be just focused on maybe even catching Shelbourne now, but certainly cementing that second place. So a winnable tie is what you want. The Shamrock Rovers and the Derrys and the Bohemians can wait for the quarters and the semi-finals, but you just want to get to the second round at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. On a final note, Jason, I know that you were present at Hogan Park yesterday for what is as close as we're ever going to get to a real local derby in League of Ireland terms. You had Treaty United under-15s and Limerick FC under-15s battling it out at Hogan Park, and there was a picture that I was made aware of actually as well late last night where that stoked the fire a tiny bit, I'd imagine, where it said it was a clear Limerick FC one by looks of a clear Limerick FC flag, which said keep your hands off our history. Was the message on the flag. Was the game spicy as well and entertaining, Jason?
Oh, it was very much so, and a great advert for underage football in the region, Adrian. I suppose, look, there's been a lot of criticism, I suppose, aimed at people because we have 2 League of Ireland underage setups in representing Limerick or in the region, if you like, and the questions have been asked. Is that fair on the grassroots clubs, I suppose, and Noel will understand what I'm saying. You look at Kennedy Cups and things like that, and it's a lot of players hoovered up, but a fantastic game. Really, really enjoyed it. And I suppose beforehand, not too many would have given Limerick FC a chance, but they certainly gave Treaty a very, very good game, and credit to Limerick FC coach Dave Deneen for the way he set his team up. Noel would be very familiar with him. He worked under Noel years ago with Limerick FC and speaks very highly of Noel, and his work was there to be seen yesterday. It really was. They were dogged, they were defensive, and they probably had the 2 best chances of the game, and came before Treaty scored, Adrian, but there was a couple of goals disallowed as well and things. It had everything, the game, and it was really, really good. I watched it with Brian O'Callaghan and Dennis Hines, and there was a great crowd there, and the pitch was in great condition. And as I said, a fantastic advert for local football.
Yeah, and speaking of underage football, Noel, we obviously spoke maybe a year and a half ago now. I spoke with yourself about the setup of the schoolboy academy in Limerick. I suppose my question would be, is there any update in that? Because COVID obviously shelved that for you. Is there any talks about that coming back and training resuming for you and players coming into the scene?
Yeah, I think there is. Look, we've been very restless, I suppose. That it's been out so long. The good news is that the Kennedy Cup squad are training away under Niall Burns and his coaching staff. There's a few friendlies organised. I know they're going to Athlone at the weekend for a game. They're talking about regionalising the competition and a date of 11th or the 12th of September. So obviously we're waiting for the local league to start again, which will be probably late August or first week of September, and we'll be out looking at games. And I'll be looking forward to putting all the academy teams back together, including a 15s and a 16s, and we might fancy our chances of a run out against Limerick or our Treaty and see if, the group, if you like, that were left behind, do they measure up? And I'd be very confident that they would measure up.